And she became concerned. And I don't know, she just started thinking, and I know both of these ladies are wonderful people, and their service was about to go down, which is what was so beautiful. Hey, Linda. Hey, Andre. Sending you so much love. Well, Linda, I'm not so sure. The only thing is because, we're still in a clinical, up until recently, we've still been technically in a clinical trial with these, they're vaccines, but really they're therapeutics that mitigate. Um, mm. Make sure you count me in, Paul. Thank you. No, I didn't hear you.
This is the Santita Jackson Show. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. We're going to be talking about the Texas abortion ban. It really went into effect last night because the Supreme Court refused to block it. I want to know what your thoughts are about that. 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. I'm Santita Jackson. This is the Santita Jackson Show. And we are coming to you from WCPT, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, Chicago, and Minneapolis, St. Paul, and all over the country and all over the world. I want you to meet my morning stars on the Santita Jackson and Friends page on Facebook. Please stream WCPT's Facebook page all day long. After I'm off the air, you are going to get Stephanie Miller and then Tom Hartman and Joni Esposito and so many people. It's just the best talk radio, the best progressive talk radio in the land. And of course, AM 950 radio, we need your support. I want to hear your thoughts today about the abortion law, about reproductive rights, about how this is all going to play out. What do you think, everybody? What do you think, everybody? The Supreme Court did something really, really, not the Supreme Court, those who have been suing, who've been pursuing the end of Roe v. Wade. Uh, they put this in the laps of citizens. Citizens will sue. Now citizens are responsible for stopping abortions. I want to know what your thoughts are about that and reproductive rights. And there's so much to talk about. There's so much to talk about. Linda, I'm so glad that you're thinking about that vaccine mandate show that we did yesterday. We're going to be doing more about that because that is becoming more and more of an issue, more and more of an issue. But I want to hear today your thoughts about what's happening in Texas and what's happening around the country. It's not just Texas, everybody. More and more states are restricting the reproductive rights of women. And I want to know what you think about that. Today, I want you to call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278, WCPT. You can also text me at that number. And if you do, GWC Injury Lawyers gives you the opportunity to do that. I want to thank you, Linda, for all of your prayers, praying fervently. They say that the prayers of the righteous availeth much, and your prayers have availed a lot. My parents have been making improvements. Our parents. I have 4 siblings, and we've been really, 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 really blessed. Really blessed. But it's a day-to-day thing, and so just be very, very careful. I'm going to have a talk with Dr. Shanina Knighton about what you do, how you care for people who have come home from the hospital or who have COVID. If you have to care for them in your home, that's something to think about too. There's certain protocols that you need to follow. So we're going to be talking about that in the coming days. Labor Day weekend. Can you believe the summer's almost over? If you feel today, it is nice and cool in Chicago, and we're only going to have a high of 77 degrees. Let's get to some of these headlines. Mostly sunny. It's a beautiful day already, but a little cool. It feels like, it's like the back of the summer's been cracked. It seems like it's going to be a little cool from here on out. Minneapolis, St. Paul, a high of 73 degrees, cloudy. The Dow closed down 48 points yesterday. The NASDAQ closed up 50 points. The S&P 500 closed up 1.4 points. And in Major League Baseball, the Cubs, 3. The Twins, 0. Yes, it was a shutout. And the White Sox, 6. Let me get that victory in. And the Pirates, 3. So, everybody, what happened? The Supreme Court is letting the nation's strictest anti-abortion law stand for now. In a 5-4 ruling announced last night. Most of the court's conservative justices ruled in an unsigned opinion that Texas's law banning abortions after roughly 6 weeks with no exceptions for rape or incest should stand while the legal fight over it continues to play out. Chief Justice John Roberts joined the court, three liberal justices in dissent. What do you think about everybody? They're saying that this isn't the end of Roe. The five conservative justices, who included all three of President Trump's appointees, wrote in their unsigned opinion that they were not weighing in on the law's constitutionality, including whether it violated Roe v. Wade or not, the court's landmark privacy decision that protected abortion rights. But legal pundits point out that Roe is effectively moot in Texas. You know, we've got a tremendous panel who are going to talk to us about it. Of course, attorney C.K. Hoffler. But we're also going to have the former national president of NOW. We're going to have three prominent Texas lawmakers talk about what's happening in Texas. I had a fantastic conversation with the former president of NOW, Terry O'Neill, Attorney Terry O'Neill, and when you shut down women's reproductive rights, you also drive up maternal mortality. We're going to hear about that from her. Everybody, the Taliban threw a parade in Afghanistan, in their second largest city, to show off their newly seized, according to this CNN report, American-made military equipment. In videos posted on social media, the militants, or that's what they're called, but they're the Taliban, displayed the hardware left behind by Afghan and U.S. forces after the withdrawal of the last U.S. troops. Do you remember the case of Elijah McClain? Well, a Colorado grand jury indicted 3 officers and 2 paramedics in the death of Elijah McClain, a young black man who was placed in a chokehold and given a sedative. McClain, 23, was stopped by police while walking home from a store in August 2019 in an incident that ended with him in a chokehold and then injected with ketamine, according to authorities. The officers and paramedics each face a charge of manslaughter and criminally negligent homicide. What's happening in New York today, everybody? They have seen more rain. For the first time in their history, they actually had a flash flood emergency. You got 7+ inches of rain in Central Park. People have been stuck on the subway since 10 o'clock last night, 9 o'clock our time. They're still stuck there. Wow. All because of Hurricane Ida, everybody. The National Weather Service, serving New York City, said Wednesday evening that this was the first time that their office had ever had to issue a flash flood emergency on a night in which the Manhattan Central Park saw more rain in one single hour than they have ever measured in their history. At least 8 people are dead in the New York City area. We are sending them much love, and desperation is growing in New Orleans because most New Orleans residents are still without power. They're still trying to find water. They're still trying to get food. Everybody, please pay attention to New Orleans. Even though Hurricane Ida has gone to the northeast, they're still struggling down in that part of the country. So let's keep on thinking about that, everybody. Did you know that with all of the challenges that we're facing around the country, a House panel approved a $37.5 billion boost to the Pentagon budget? Wow. What do you think about that? This is the House Armed Services Committee. They voted 42-17 to approve ranking member Mike Rogers, Republican from Alabama, his amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act. They will be getting, and 14 Democrats joined him, they will be giving the Pentagon $37.5 billion more dollars. What do you think about that? Call me at 773 WCPT, 773-763-9278. And something that kind of fell off the radar. Did you know that Rahm Emanuel, former mayor of Chicago, former Mayor Rahm Emanuel, was nominated to be ambassador to Japan? Now, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said that she says she urges the Senate to vote no on his confirmation. She's continued, quote, as mayor of Chicago, Rahm Emanuel helped cover up the murder of Laquan McDonald, a mere teenager, when he was shot 16 times in the back by a Chicago police officer. This alone should be flatly disqualifying for any position of public trust, let alone representing the United States as an ambassador. What do you think, everybody? Did you know that we have a wake-up call? Let's look at the environment. We could have the extinction of 30% of tree species, everybody. Nearly a third of the world's tree species are at risk of extinction, largely due to agriculture, logging, and increasingly the global climate emergency, which we are now seeing in the United States. Well, there's a report that is revealing that indigenous resistance is disrupting a quarter of U.S. and Canadian emissions. Indigenous resistance to fossil fuel projects in the United States and Canada made nearly the nation's annual planet heating pollution. That's it for the headlines. Let's get some good news from the pastor of Grace Community Church, Grace Central, everybody. What a great, great, great church, my dear friend. And of course, the leader of the Tommies. I love you and Percy Beatty. You are going to be at a gospel fest, the Gospel Fest here in Chicago tomorrow, Pastor, before you give us the good news.
Yes, we'll be at Millennium Park at Tommy's reunion, singing all of the great songs that God has afforded us to give to the gift to the body of Christ. Safe in His arms, my mind's made up for the good of them. It's going to rain. My mind, Jesus rose. You are everything. Blind Francine Jones has come in. Some of the lead singers from out of town has come home to do this. We're closing the Gospel Fest tomorrow, September 3rd, at 8:30 till 9:30, 1 hour. It's going to be absolutely amazing. Words of inspiration and the good news, which is the gospel. Yes, indeed, I was listening to you, always listen to you. I'm a study of words, and I listen and discern. And your radio show says progressive talk where the facts matter. Where the facts matter. And, you know, it's funny that you would say that because the music that we've done down through the years is really touching, it's soul stirring, it's inspiring, it's motivating. And your talk radio show is the same thing. And wonderfully, Santita, God's word is the same thing, Santita. You ready to watch this? 1 Peter 1:6. And I thank you that you put the word on your radio show so people can get different perspectives from all kinds of teaching, from Methodist to Baptist to culture, because at the end of the day, I don't care how you slice it, which is what this message is today. One call does it all. One call does it all. In 1 Peter 1:6-9, it says, "In all this you greatly rejoice, though for a little while you may have had to suffer grief and all kinds of trials. These have come," watch this, "so that the proving genuineness of your faith are of greater worth than gold or the crazy situations that you've gone through, which will perish. Even though refined by fire, may result in praise, glory, and honor when Jesus Christ is revealed, or when you study His word to believe it with your whole heart. Though you have not seen Him," literally, watch this, "you love Him, trust and believe Him. You believe in Him and are filled with inexpressible and glorious joy, for you are receiving the end result of your faith, the salvation that saves your soul." That's 1 Peter 1:6-9. One call does it all. If I had to use for a topic, I'm using the verse particularly because our trials and tribulations, fight battles, altercations, disagreements, and the pain, growth spurts, mistakes, and lack of faith in God comes in many shapes, form, and sizes. One of the hard trials that is often gone unnoticed, Antita, is the opportunity of salvation. No, for real. From the cares of this world with direction to be better, healed, and God's cure to really live an abundant life, or at least have peace in a crazy world. In a real world, when it comes to God's word in our lives, whether we have Him or not, all of our actions has tangible effects. I got to hurry up and get out of here, get off the shout. God's word is not to hurt us. It's to move us beyond our extreme, not even to compete or compare with others, but particularly see God's plan for me. And then when you read it, it's to see God's plans for you. Santita, your clean ain't my clean. And my way to deal with life ain't your way to deal with life. All of our stories are different, but we share the same pain. It's called hurt. The fact is, anyone who doesn't believe in divine miracles when it comes to God's word is not really a realist in Christ. Yes, sir, Santita. Just look around. It's a hot mess. If the craziness is real, Santita, there got to be an amazing that is real as well. Nothing great has ever been achieved except by those who dare to believe that God inside them, rightly divided, was a superior to all circumstances that we deal with. And I'm closing here. We can easily allow ourselves to mentally, physically, emotionally, financially, spiritually, socially, culturally, verbally, sexually, professionally, personally become our own master. But when we make the call and ask God for the department we're dealing with, God can help us in any area of our lives. Privately, you must make the call. And in and through God's word by faith, when we are genuine in our hearts to trust him in every area of our lives. And Peter, this is so true. Matthew 16:25, no one can serve two masters. God's word does not bring encouraging words. God's word also brings challenging words to prove what we ask, strengthen us so that we can sabotage and ambush trials, tribulations, hurt, and so forth.
Mm.
Don't make one of the biggest mistakes in the world, underestimating who you are and who God is. Make the call. Whatever you're hurting, with family, church, culture, tell God, go to that department and ask God to give you the answers to that thing, and he will. One call does it all.
Blessings to Pastor Darius Brooks, Grace Central. Also, one of the great psalmists and producers and songwriters of our time. And of course, we thank you and Percy Beatty Budd. We thank Pastor Milton Brunson, who founded the Tommies, and we thank him for all that he invested in all of you and gave us some of the greatest uplift. Yes.
Today is our 21st wedding anniversary.
And we were at that wedding. Amen. Happy anniversary to you and First Lady Deborah. We just send you much love. We just love her and love you all so much. It's been 21 years, unbelievable. And you have a beautiful daughter. You've just taken her to college. And what a blessing. One day you'll have to come and talk to us about your journey because it truly is. It is you've been tested and you have a tremendous testimony. I love you. We'll see you in Millennium Park tomorrow night. At what time?
From 5:30 to 8:30, to 5:30, 9:30. It's only $3 this year. They're only doing the fest Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, blues, gospel, and jazz.
All right.
Friday is, yep, only 3 days.
All right. Meet the Tommies out there. The reunion is tomorrow from 5:30 to 9:30, everybody. It's only $3. You don't want to miss it. The reunion, the Tommies reunion, everybody. They've been all around the country. They'll be going all around the world, but now they're in Chicago, in their birthplace. I love you, Pastor. Pastor Darius Brooks, everybody. Your will is what's best for me. We've got Dr. Deborah Furr-Holden. Dr. Deborah Furr-Holden. As we are today, Dr. Deborah Furr-Holden, we're going to be talking about the Texas abortion law. The Texas abortion law. We were waiting to see what the Supreme Court was going to say because they purposely and purposefully stayed out of it until last night. In fact, their decision effectively is letting this law go into effect as of yesterday. Really, you won't have access. You will not have access um, to the full scope of your reproductive rights. You won't. Women will not. And Attorney Terry O'Neill, the former national president of NOW, who will be with us in the next hour, along with others from Texas, she said, look, maternal mortality, when something like this law went into effect a few years ago, maternal mortality multiplied. What is, you're an epidemiologist, you're the Associate Dean of Public Health at Michigan State University. What is going on with maternal mortality in the United States? I've got about 4 minutes. Why is it so high? Why do so many women die trying to have a baby?
You mean specifically in the U.S. or just in the world overall?
In the United States.
Well, I mean, maternal mortality is higher in the United States than it is in a lot of other developing countries. We just don't have the same level of health. We have a lot more health care, a lot more health care spending, but we don't quite have the same level of health as other countries that are sort of our equivalent, development, economic, counterparts. And maternal health is no exception. Although I will say our fetal and maternal outcomes are far better than in most parts of the world. They're just not on par with other countries like ours. And there are many, many issues around that. The first thing is, go to my issue, equity. We have major issues around equity and who has access to what, who has quality access to good prenatal care. Prenatal care is like the big game changer for good fetal and maternal outcomes. And everybody doesn't have the same level of access. You go into some rural communities and you'll have many, many women who have not seen a doctor at all during their pregnancy.
What does that mean when you don't get a chance to see a doctor during your pregnancy? What does that do? I've got about a minute and a half.
Well, you miss the benefits of all the innovation that we have. Things like sonograms became a game changer. They can do now fetal screening for diseases at 6 weeks. My daughter just had baby girl India. She knew her gender when she was 6 weeks pregnant. And they tested by doing a simple blood draw on my daughter. They didn't have to do an intravaginal exam. They didn't have to disturb baby. They simply took a blood test, a blood draw for my daughter, and were able to do a full panel of genetic screening for things like Tay-Sachs disease, Down syndrome, and other things. They can do all of that stuff now as early as 6 weeks by taking a little sample of mom's blood. You can see early on if a pregnancy is in the right place, right, to make sure that the pregnancy is inside of the uterus, not outside of the uterus. You want to make sure that mom is getting all of the proper nutrition and the vitamins that she needs to support healthy fetal growth and mom's continued health. Babies will suck everything from mom to be viable. So the vitamins aren't just for baby. The vitamins are also for mom. You've heard the stories of women losing their teeth.
Oh, yeah.
1 minute.
So when you don't access prenatal care, when you don't have quality and ready access to just those basic healthcare services, you sort of miss all the benefits that we've seen in advancements in medicine, over the last several decades. So it's a big issue. It's a big issue.
Well, I want you to stay with us because we're talking about the Texas abortion law. We're talking about really what's happened in Texas is Roe v. Wade is now moot. It really is. And so now the Supreme Court broke their silence and they will not block this law. So what does that mean? In cases of rape or incest, you've got to have the child. How does that work? And they did something really, really slick. It's the citizens who have to sue. They're not going to sue the patients, but they'll sue everybody else, even the Uber and the Lyft drivers who take you to get those services. Let's talk about that. How will it impact poor people? How will it impact middle class and wealthy people? How will this all work? Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a few minutes. Call me at 773-763-9278. Back in a few minutes. Santita Jackson Show. Dr. Deb?
Yeah, this is crazy to me, and it's crazy that the Supreme Court said, yeah, we're not going to get involved.
We're with it. Oh, yeah. No, I mean, my mother has been saying for years that Roe v. Wade was going to be overturned. She said that. A long time ago. She said, watch. She said, it's going to get overturned. I was like, oh, I don't look at her and say, oh my gosh. I go, oh, okay. I wait for it to come to pass because she can see it. She said she said this more than 30 years ago. She said this is going to get overturned because you saw the courts making a hard right, Deborah, under Reagan. And see, I will give this to Republicans, and this might sound partisan, but it is what it is. They play the long game. All these people who really deep into power play the long game, and John Roberts was working in Washington 40 years ago as a young law clerk, as a young law student, and they mentor people. They put them in the system, and they learn how the system works, and then they learn how laws are made. They learn it all, and then they're put on different courts. Then, if they get to the D.C. Court of Appeals, boom, they're fast tracked to um, or some other high court. They're fast tracked to the Supreme Court. That's how it works. But these people really know the system.
We have Attorney Hoffler.
Okay, Attorney Hoffler. We've got Dr. Deborah Holden. You know she wanted you to stay on and be on her segment. So next week we got to do that.
And, and Deborah, we did text. Of course, I was texting you at 10 o'clock, 10 p.m. 11, all that stuff. And I appreciate you did text me back. And I thought it was gonna you were gonna stay on, and so I wasn't sure, but I'm just so excited and would love to have you because I think Santita, just think about it. Any topic that we discuss has COVID ramifications in today's
and health,
and health. I mean, any topic, topic. So.
Health, equity. I mean, boom. It's
equity, health, equity. Disproportionately impacting everybody negatively, and everybody who has, a little color in their skin, things like that.
Oh, absolutely.
From a legal standpoint, that's how I look at a lot of times the practice, because I see it in cases all the time. That's in fact how a lot of times that's how case law is made. There's always that sense. When it doesn't even have, the cases don't even have to involve Black and brown people, but the ramifications and impact do.
We have Judge Moorhead.
Judge Moorhead?
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm so honored that you're joining us today.
It is my pleasure.
Your honor. Okay. We got the judge here. She's got the final word. This is Judge Audrey Moorhead out of Dallas, and we're so honored. We have Attorney C.K. Hoffler. She's outgoing president of the National Bar Association, and she's also chair of Rainbow Push.
Coming back in 10.
We've got Dr. Deborah Holden. Yeah.
And I have to say, I know Judge Moorhead.
It's like you do know her. Do we have Diane Gibson?
This is the Santita Jackson Show. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. 773-763-9278 is my number. 773-763 WCPT. WCPT is my home station. Chicago's Progressive Talk, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 Radio, my other home station to the north. Sending much love to you, Chad Larson and company, up at AM 950 Radio in Minneapolis, St. Paul, the voice of progressive Minnesota. And I want you to meet my morning stars over here on the Santita Jackson and Friends page, Andre and Linda. Linda was on before you, Andre. And let me see, Linda Smith and Michael Ann, one of my original morning stars. Barbara Bacon, Shirley from beautiful Philadelphia, Vicky Paula, one of my originals, and let me see, Joyce, and so many of you, and Raphael down there in Brazil sending you much love, Carol, and Carol Crowley, and Renee Criswell, and Samantha, and Chaparral, everyone. I want to hear what your thoughts are about this Texas abortion law, about reproductive rights, just what happened, and what was the Supreme Court doing? Indeed, they broke their silence. The Supreme Court, according to this New York Times report, refused just before midnight on Wednesday, that is last night, to block a Texas law prohibiting most abortions less than a day after it took effect and became the most restrictive abortion measure in the nation. The vote was 5-4. Chief Justice John Roberts joined the court's 3 liberal members in dissent. But no matter, the majority opinion was unsigned and consisted of a long, single paragraph. Indeed, Justice Sonia Sotomayor said the court's order is stunning, presented with an application to enjoin a flagrantly unconstitutional law engineered to prohibit women from exercising their constitutional rights and evade judicial scrutiny. A majority of justices have opted to bury their heads in the sand. What does this law call for? And why is everyone saying that? Boy, oh boy, the way this law will be applied is it's really ingenious. You can get around I mean, because it's people like you and me who are going to have to enforce it. We're the ones who are going to file the lawsuits. I just want to know what you think about it. Call me at 773-763-9278. Hey, Renata and D. Ray and Meddy and Joyce again. And I'm just saying hello to all my folks in Marquay. Spoke with Lorraine early this morning. God bless her. She travels to New York to take care of her mom. And Diana. And I want to hear your thoughts, everybody. What do you think? I mean, what do you think about all of this? Of course, we have got Dr. Deborah Furholden, who's staying on here with us. Of course, noted epidemiologist. She is the Associate Dean of Public Health at Michigan State University, coming out of Johns Hopkins University. And we've got attorney C.K. Hoffler, of course. You can have legal Q&A with C.K. on the Santita Jackson Show every Wednesday at 7 o'clock Central Standard Time. But she also has her own show on WAOK, the iconic Atlanta radio station, every Tuesday from 11 to 12 Eastern Standard Time. We're so honored to have someone new to the show, but she's already family. Indeed, Texas Judge Audrey Moorhead from Dallas. Let me start with you, Your Honor. What happened? Help break this down for us. And should we be concerned about this all over the country?
Well, good morning, first of all.
Oh, good morning, and God bless you.
So excited to spend this time with my family this morning, especially on this very pressing topic. As a sitting judge, it's very important to make sure when we make comments, we are not commenting necessarily on the law per se, but I can certainly offer some issues that the people may not really think about. And so what we have had over the past few years is a very slow erosion of Roe v. Wade. They've been tapping at it for a while. And Texas took the monumental step of creating a bill that is one of the most restrictive and prohibitive in the country. And it makes it very frustrating for it to be challenged anywhere.
This is
there is a cause for concern. Let me say, I do agree there is a cause for concern for anyone who are concerned about women's rights and women's rights to be in control of their own bodies and to chart their own destiny in general. But it's also an erosion of everyone's rights, because if they can take this right away from women, there are other rights that will come next.
So you think that we need to be vigilant now because, well, you know what we're seeing in Texas with voting rights. It just seems that Texas is playing a very critical role in where the country is heading in terms of our rights, voting rights, reproductive rights. The rights of choice. Just more broadly, we're talking with Judge Audrey Moorhead out of Dallas, Texas, about this Texas law. Indeed, the Supreme Court broke their silence last night. They will not block the Texas law that will ban most abortions in the state of Texas. I want to know what you're thinking about that. And I know it can be a bit of a mixed bag because many of us, no woman would ever enter into an abortion um, as if it's a walk in the park. Every woman takes this very seriously. Um, so I think we need to establish that first. We need to establish that first. Wherever you fall on the issue of abortion, let us have a compassionate discussion today, everybody, because this is it's a very difficult topic. It's a very difficult position that people can find themselves in if they if they feel that a pregnancy that they have cannot be completed. That I can only imagine. I can only imagine what that is about. We are getting Hoffler. We've got Texas State Representative Jasmine Crockett. Jasmine for 100. That's right, representing the 100th district. How are you, State Representative Crockett?
I'm doing well this morning. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to join you under probably some of the worst circumstances ever, especially considering the fact that this law was crafted by. Well, I don't even want to give credit and say that the men crafted this bill, but the Republican Party here in the state of Texas, in the Texas House, there are only 7 women that belong to that caucus. And the rest of the 83 members of the caucus are mostly white men. There's 1 black man and 1 Hispanic man. And to think that they completely ignored the voices of more than 30 women that belong to the House Democratic caucus is beyond annoying. But more importantly, kind of getting into the weeds a little bit on this bill is really crazy because as a practicing lawyer, normally we're used to someone having to have what we call standing, right? So when you're in a car accident, number one, that you've got to prove that the other person was at fault, and number 2, that you've had some damages of some sort. In this particular law, anyone in this country can sue. And they can sue everyone except for the woman. They can sue the Uber driver that takes her to get her abortion. They can sue the doctor. They can sue the hospital. They can sue the nurse that checks her in. They can sue everyone but the woman with no standing, with it not being any of their business whatsoever. And they don't have to prove damages. The minimum award is $10,000. Considering where we are in the court systems right now, it doesn't seem right that we would want to clog our court systems up under these kind of circumstances with frivolous lawsuits that most likely will be very difficult for a litigant to prove in the first place. But it's mostly just harassment that will take place. It's going to be those that are basically looking for a bounty. And so they will be harassing practitioners, and you can't even recover attorney fees under these circumstances either. So it is beyond egregious. But I do want to address one part that most people probably don't know, and that is even if a child is raped, a child of any age, if a child is raped, that child has to carry that child. That child is not given an option to abort, nor is an adult woman that is raped. We specifically were trying to at least get a carve out for that, and rape victims will not be given an exception under this law.
What is your justification for that, Representative?
It's interesting because one of the male authors on the Senate side, and I talked about this on yesterday, and he said, we've got to look out for the innocent life. And I'm like, what about the innocent life of the child who was already victimized by a rapist? And then this law decides that it's going to victimize this child again by forcing this child to carry this child and bear this child. Well, we provided additional resources for people that are financially strapped. And I was like, you can't heal a wound with money. That is not a fix. And that is trauma on top of trauma. That doesn't make sense. And he's like, well, it's the most innocent life. And I'm like, you're talking about a bill that, number one, starts a ban before most women even know that they're pregnant. And you guys call it a heartbeat bill when we know from a medical standpoint, there is no heart that is fully formed at 6 weeks. That's not a heartbeat. That's not what occurs at that point. It is the most ridiculous thing that I've seen. It's kind of like the voting bills. It's our understanding that there's basically a think tank that tells Republicans what to do, tells them what to file, and this was one of those. The difference is a number of these laws have been struck down, and that's because the enforcement was on the side of government. So they tried it a different way by showing, hey, we're going to do enforcement with just random individuals. And they were able to make some headway. So we're the first state that has done it this way. And, you know, considering what we saw, what we saw Congress do with stealing those seats on the Supreme Court, I think now our only option, I think we've seen everything that we need to see out of the Supreme Court, is we've got to expand the court. That has to be the next call that is made, is we expand the court. If they cheated to steal these seats so that they could have an unfair advantage, then we need to go ahead and expand the court so that we can even things out.
Well, you know, I think, you know, we're talking with Texas State Representative Jasmine Crockett, a brilliant lawyer and legislator. I think we need to do that anyway because the founding fathers said that all of these institutions, the U.S. Congress, U.S. House of Representatives, uh, Senate, all that's supposed to be expanded, particularly the House of Representatives. They were very, very specific about that. You shouldn't have 435 members. That was okay when you had a few million Americans. That's what that was for. We should have thousands of representatives. That is not what we have. And so, you know, you have, I think you're making a great point. We're talking with Texas State Representative Jasmine Crockett. And we've been speaking with Dallas Judge Audrey Moorhead. You know, let me go to you, Attorney C.K. Hoffler. The most restrictive um, in the country. Citizens will enforce this law, not the state. Patients can't be sued. The Supreme Court was silent until last night. First, let's look at the citizens. How does that work? Citizens, not the state, will enforce the law. How did that work? How is that going to work?
Well, first of all, good morning. And Santita, I just want you to know that we are amongst legal giants in Texas, and I would say in the world. Judge Moorhead is the first Black woman to serve as judge of the Dallas County Criminal Court. First Black woman to be on the board of the board of directors also, and serving some of the things that she has done. And I know this as former past president of the National Bar Association. Extraordinary. And Representative Crockett is known nationwide for fighting for the least of these high-profile cases, low-profile cases, and helping people who literally would not have a voice. So I just wanted to say that because I think that our listeners need to know the caliber and the level of legal talent here today, represented from Texas. Having said that, this law, Santita, is the most unconstitutional to me, illegal, immoral, and unethical law, and we have to be careful about this. I'm going to say it. Ahmaud Arbery, let's think about this. When people have the ability, everyday people, to take matters into their own hands to seek justice, it results in Ahmaud Arbery. Because Ahmaud Arbery, people just said, well, you know, we need this young man he's jogging in a place he shouldn't be jogging in. What is that? We need to stop him. And he was gunned down like a runaway slave. And that is the analogy that I draw to what's going to happen to women. And the impact is really going to be, and I'm going to say it, on Black and brown women. That's the impact. And when Judge Moorhead said that this is really the culmination of the gradual erosion of Roe v. Wade, and Texas led the way, this is exactly how we had the erosion of the Voting Rights Act that culminated in Shelby County versus Holder. This is exactly how it happened. So what we need to brace ourselves for is that this will be the blueprint, if you will, for the erosion of every single civil right and human right and protections that we have in this country. that protect our communities. And that is why everyone needs to focus on this. And I agree with what Representative Crockett said. That's why we need the expansion of the U.S. Supreme Court. Because if never before, if ever, there were people saying, oh, no, they can be, I don't know who these people were, but there were people that believed that the U.S. Supreme Court could be balanced, could be this, could be that. This is proof positive that that is not the case. And this is why people need to pay attention to this, because the very fabric of our country, justice and democracy is at stake. And it's all emanating from this one case, this law in Texas that went all the way up to the Supreme Court, that is now going to change forever the reproductive rights of women. Because what happens in Texas, just like what happens in Florida and Georgia, happens throughout the country. And let's watch and see what's going to happen in the next 30 to next 60 to 90 days.
Well, I mean, I think bringing up Ahmaud Arbery's case, I mean, the fact that this has been put in the citizens' hands, it's like, I'm with you. I don't think it's going to stop at a phone call. I mean, because these women are harassed going into these places where they get all kinds of services. Quite frankly, when you see someone going into a clinic, you don't know what they're going there for. You really don't, particularly with respect to Planned Parenthood. You don't know. And putting this in citizens' hands, it's like we're turning into a vigilante nation. C.K. Hoffler, let me bring in Dr. Deborah Holden. Public health, how will this impact us from the public health perspective, Dr. Verholden? I mean, will we go back to coat hanger abortions? Will we have increased poverty? But will we have increased abuse of children? I mean, people could be having children that they do not want, cannot afford. I mean, there's just so much. And in rape, in cases of rape and incest, I mean, this just seems like a nightmare.
Well, there's multiple issues connected to this. So once you force somebody's hand to have a child, is the government then also culpable and on the hook for the care and provisions for that child? Does this bill have some companion law that any woman who wants an abortion who's now not able to get it is entitled to a certain amount of provisions and benefit to, care and provide for that child for the next 18 years? I mean, it's so moralistic in dealing with one piece of an issue that has nothing to do with health or health care. When people start to regulate what women can and can't do with their uteruses, we are in a very, very, very scary place. So this is basically denying people access to quality health care. And we already know what happens when you do that. Healthcare costs go up, mental health goes down, and then there's a sequelae of other associated costs. This one just happens to be linked with life. And there's a tremendous cost. Any of us who raised children or mothered or fathered, children maybe that weren't biologically ours, but we had some hand in their upbringing, know taking care of a child is a lot, physically, emotionally, financially, socially. So I think this is bad public health. It's bad public policy, and it only deals with one aspect of the issue. I find it absolutely deplorable and disgusting. I just don't understand how in this day and time we've gone all the way backwards, and mostly we have men regulating women's uteruses. It's just really disgusting.
Uteruses and life options. I mean, please, yes.
Can I just add one
thing? Of course.
Also, this is going to encourage illegal abortion. And what that means is back in the day, like way back in the day, when we saw women desperate and wanted to have abortions, there were always people who would pop up who may not have had a medical license, but who knew how to perform abortions with hangers, clothing hangers, and all kinds of unsavory practices, unsavory medical or hygiene practices. And many women died in that process. So I think we just have to look at it on so many levels. And I just want to correct myself about Judge Moorhead. She was the first woman to be elected judge of Dallas County Criminal Court, the first woman. And first female, African-American female to serve on the board of directors of the State Bar of Texas. I just wanted to correct myself. I was so excited to be sharing the platform with her. But I think we have to be concerned about health care issues, even more so, because women, impoverished women, women in our communities don't have the luxury of flying or driving across the border and having an abortion in some neighboring state. That's going to be for those who are privileged, those who are wealthy, those wives of those people who may have imposed this legislation. Their children, people who are privileged, will simply fly out of Texas because they're going to have their
Wait a
children.
minute, CK, or their doctor, who is their friend, someone they went to school with, or who's a family friend, will just take care of it. Okay? Let's just keep it 100. This is a real issue for poor and working class women. It's an issue for all women.
And it's going to be a real issue for Black doctors.
Mm-hmm.
I hope, and I'm pretty sure the National Medical Association is on point with this. It's going to be an issue for Black doctors because they are there to serve and protect and to provide health care, the best health care for the community, for people. And they are the ones that are servicing by and large, those in our community. You watch what happens to Black doctors who are going to be targeted under suspicion of performing these procedures in our community. So this is going to have ramifications throughout the industry, throughout the medical industry, throughout really the political. This is a political issue that's having real impact on healthcare, medical industry, the way that our families are going to perceive. And it's not that people are going to stop having sex and girls are going to stop getting pregnant. It's what is going to happen. They literally could be putting their lives at risk because they realize that they can't afford to have the child. And I used to be on the board of Planned Parenthood in West Palm Beach many years ago, and I can tell you the services that Planned Parenthood performs or the services to the community, that's just one thing. They do so much in the community for people who can't afford to go to doctors and who need guidance, who need the education. So it's going to impact dramatically what Planned Parenthood will be able to do safely. They probably have to have a battalion of police or security guards to protect their employees.
Well, you know what? Before I go to break, I want to ask Judge Moorhead this question, just very quickly. I've got about 30 seconds. Is this now a crime?
If this was a criminal ban, we would have more information. This is mostly civil penalties at this point, and very quickly, what you're saying about the doctors being at risk, but so many other people are at risk. Doctors are at risk because their staff could be targeted. Anyone who is in association to help with that procedure is a target. Plaintiffs, that people who are actually bringing this lawsuit don't even have to live in Texas. The Uber driver that takes the young lady to the clinic could be a target of this bill. That's why it's so insidious.
Everybody, let's talk about it. I want to know what your thoughts are. 773-763-9278. 773 WCPT. We're going to bring on your dear friend, Diane Gibson, Miss Community from Dallas. We love her. She's been working with the Rainbow Push for decades. And the former national president of the National Organization of Women, who has some very interesting information about maternal mortality and the tie between laws like this and how this will spike a rise in the deaths of mothers-to-be. More of the Santita Jackson Show in just a few minutes. Call me at 773-763-9278 WCPT. Thank you, Paul. We just got Ms. Gibson. If you can call her as you call Attorney O'Neill.
Okay.
Ladies, we're on Facebook Live, so you can talk amongst yourselves, but we are on Facebook Live. Thank you all so much for being with us today. And feel free to, jump in. But when you hear me interrupt, I'm looking at the clock because I'm going to have to make hard outs. Okay. So just so that you know, at 27, after the next, at 27 and at 57 is when I have to get out. Just so that you all know.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. But thank you all so much for being here. I mean, whew, it's a lot. And I think I think this is a tough topic for many people who you know, coming out of the church, abortion is not something that is something that you ever want to see happen, ever, 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 ever. But when you think of coat hanger abortions, and when you think of the, that to which people will resort, this is very, very frightening. It's very frightening, and it makes me feel like we're on the plantation. Because our foremothers
Ms.
were
Gibson.
forced to have babies, right? They didn't have a choice.
That's kind of, Texas MO is the plantation. Um,
Ooh.
Even when we were debating or they were debating, because I'm still on boycott from this session, when they were debating the voting bill, once my colleagues finally gave them a quorum, the Speaker of the House said, hey, just so you know, we're not going to use that R word. No racism, no racist. Don't do that when we're talking about this bill, right? And it's like,
And we have Terry O'Neill.
constitutional right to free speech. If we are going to hurt your feelings and call a spade, but you don't care about the people on the receiving end, and you don't care about how hurt they're going to be by this bill. And sadly enough, that's all we saw all session long. There was a target on the back of every large urban center, specifically because they tend to be areas of color. And you would think that with us growing at the rate that we've grown, Texas was one of the fastest, if not the fastest growing state over the last decade. And all of our growth was due to people of color. 95% of it was due to people of color. So this idea that all of a sudden, all these laws that have worked for so long and worked so well, we've got to undo them all. And so, it's really been frightening, from them saying that insurrectionists can absolutely participate as partisan poll watchers. When you talk about vigilantes, right? We know that that's the whole plan. There was a recording of a group talking about we've got to go down there, as they were speaking about going into Houston and policing their elections. And they've empowered them beyond what our actual trained election workers have. They've also given them a pass to commit at least one crime before you can even call the police. I mean, let's think about all the black kids that get picked up for possession of marijuana. They don't get a free pass, right? Like it's been an eye-opening and very disappointing session here in Texas. I could have never looked at a prior session and thought this is what it would be like. And serving was one of the first black women ever elected to the House. Symphonia Thompson and Eddie Bernice Johnson were elected together back in the 70s as the first black women to ever serve in the Texas House. For her to be here, she's going on almost 50 years. For her to say this is the worst session, that tells you about where we are as far as progress in the state of Texas.
Well, I guess, you know what, State Representative Crockett, I would say just the pushback against progress. Because, we made progress. But people are also very serious about pushing back against the gains that we've made. Because Dr. King was successful. Whitney Young was successful. Jim Farmer, Jesse Jackson, all these folks have been successful. But we now have to pick up the baton and keep pushing. We can see how hard it was, not only to make these advances, but to hold the line, right? Yeah. This is hard because these folks didn't put them out. Do not die. They have children.
Yep.
And they don't give up their power. Oh, I'm going to free you. No. Whew. But when I think of, but Diane Gibson, are you there, Miss Community?
I'm here.
We are so glad because I was getting concerned, but I said, okay, she got all the other people up because that's what Diane does. She organizes everybody, right? We know that. She's gonna organize you.
I knew they could represent well, and they have. So I'm listening. So I knew they would actually be on point.
Well, I want you all of you know Terry Williams. I mean, she's not Terry Williams. I'm thinking, of course, Terry Williams up in New York. I've got New York on the brain because of what's happened there last night. But of course, Attorney Terry O'Neill, sister beloved, former president of the National Organization of Women, the national president. She's with us today, and she's got some very interesting take on this, as she's been really trying to work with, as she says, her white sisters to help sensitize them to why everybody's got skin in this game. Some of us, and I would say, it's also, it comes down to economic class. Everybody, think about that. Because, middle class and wealthier people, this is not going to be as much of an issue for them. It's not. Well, at least on the front side. We don't know where this is going to go because, of course, CK, you brought up the whole point of vigilantism, and that is real and frightening. And these people are so, oh gosh, so.
And they're going to be people because,
Hold on.
Change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show, WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. I am Santita Jackson. It's 6 minutes after the hour, and it's a joy to be with you as we talk about the Texas abortion ban. Indeed, the Supreme Court broke their silence last night, and they will not block the Texas abortion law, the most restrictive in the nation, rendering Roe v. Wade moot in the state of Texas. I want to hear from you at 773 WCPT, 773-763-9278. Let's talk about this today. If you want to text me, please text me at that number at 773-763-9278. GWC Injury Lawyers gives you the opportunity to do that. But let's get to some of these headlines so we can get to this all-star panel that we have assembled today. And there's a seat waiting for you, but you need to call 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. In Chicago, we're going to have a high of 77 degrees, mostly sunny. The sun is out, and it is beautiful in Chicago today. It's a little cool, though. Minneapolis, St. Paul, a high of 73 degrees. It will be cloudy. The Dow closed down 48 points yesterday after having a remarkable month in August. And the NASDAQ closed up 50 points. The S&P 500 closed up 1.4 points. In baseball, the Twins were shut out by the Cubs. The Chicago Cubs 3, the Minneapolis Twins. Minnesota, wow, shut out 3-0. And guess what? White Sox 6 and the Pirates 3. Everybody, in major news, days after Hurricane Ida tore through Louisiana, leaving still 1 million people without power in New Orleans and the surrounding areas, the remnants are on a deadly path of destruction in the Northeast, virtually shutting down New York City. At least 8 people died in storm-related deaths in New York and New Jersey last night, authorities have said, after Ida's potent remnants spawned tornadoes, which touched down in the Northeast and drenched the region with heavy rains. Drivers abandoned cars. The New York City subway system was closed because it is flooded out. People have been left down in the New York City subway since 10 o'clock last night. Many of them are still there right now, because it's flooded. They could not get out. They couldn't get up. Sending prayers to our brothers and sisters in the Northeast today. Let's look at what happened in Texas, everybody. Let's look at what happened in Texas. The Supreme Court refused just before midnight last night to block a Texas law prohibiting most abortions less than a day after it took effect and became the most restrictive abortion measure in the nation. The vote was 5-4. Chief Justice John Roberts joined with minority, the 3 liberal members in dissent. Indeed, Justice Sonia Sotomayor said the court's order is stunning, presented with an application to enjoin a flagrantly unconstitutional law engineered to prohibit women from exercising their constitutional rights and evade judicial scrutiny. We've got a tremendous panel who can help to break all of this down for us today, because we need to know how this is all going to play out. We've been talking with Dr. Deborah Holden, Associate Dean of Public Health at Michigan State University, coming straight out of Johns Hopkins, brilliant epidemiologist, the former immediate past national president of the National Bar Association, chair of Rainbow Push, attorney C.K. Hoffler. Of course, you can catch legal Q&A with C.K. right here on the Santita Jackson Show every Wednesday at 7 a.m. But she also has her own show on WAOK in Atlanta. That, of course, you can get it everywhere at 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time every Wednesday. We're joined by really a group of women who've made a lot of history. Judge Audrey Moorhead, first woman elected to be a judge in Dallas. She is a judge in the Dallas criminal court system. We have got State Representative Jasmine Crockett, brilliant lawyer and legislator. Indeed, she is part of the state representatives group that we've been talking to, who have been trying to deny the state legislature a quorum to save our voting rights. We owe you so much, State Representative Jasmine Crockett. Got a very, very two dear friends of mine who join us. Indeed, Miss Community in Dallas. She has been working with the Rainbow Coalition directly with Reverend Jackson for decades. Diane Gibson, love you so much, and love my sister beloved. The past national president of the National Organization of Women, attorney Terry O'Neill, brilliant civil rights lawyer who spent a lot of time down in New Orleans in that part of the world. Let me start with you, attorney O'Neill. Your thoughts about this and about this law and how the Supreme Court intervened or didn't intervene, and where all of this is going and how this could impact women on the ground. Attorney Terry O'Neill.
Well, Santita, Texas has been if you will, leader in attacking women's access to reproductive health care for many, many years. And guess what? Texas is also a national leader in maternal mortality rates and infant mortality rates. The reality is that when you block women from essential reproductive health care, that is a disaster for maternal mortality and infant mortality rates. Look, 1 in 4 of us, 1 in 4 women will have an abortion by the age of 45. It is a necessary and common aspect of our reproductive health care. But what happens in Texas, just to give you an example, back in the early 2010s, Texas passed a law intended to shut down more than half of the health care clinics where abortions were offered in the state. They did that, and guess what? The maternal mortality rate skyrocketed in Texas because clinics that offer abortion care also offer a range of other reproductive health care services. So when you shut down those clinics, then women lack access to an entire range of healthcare services. So that is what's going on in Texas, what's going to happen in Texas. And by the way, if you look back to 1973 when Roe versus Wade was decided, the maternal mortality rate plummeted throughout the 1970s after Roe v. Wade was decided and abortion care became legal and widely accessible to women. And again, so stopping abortions, this is not what it's about. It's about withholding essential health care from women, and it will have disastrous results for women's health.
Why is it not framed that way, Terry?
Well, the right wing has been very, very clear that they knew that if they tried to make it an issue not about women, but about fetuses, about unborn babies. There are internal documents that surfaced again sometime in the 2010s. Email correspondence with extremist right-wing women's organizations debating whether they should sort of come clean about what they were after, which is to control women, to really push women out of public access to having, to being in the public square, whether they should become clean about that, or should they stick to their focus on, women's, should they say that eliminating abortion care is really for women's health, good for health. And one of the extremist right-wing women in the email thread, look, let's be clear. Everybody knows that an abortion at every stage of pregnancy is safer than childbirth. Right? Let me say that again. Childbirth is is risky. And in fact, everybody knows it is riskier at every stage, riskier than abortion at every stage of pregnancy. So they know that what they're doing endangers women's health. But that's not popular. So they cloak it in religiosity. They cloak the misogyny. They cloak it in being concerned about fetuses and babies. There is no concern for fetuses and babies in reality
at all. Diane Gibson, they don't care about fetuses. They don't care about babies. They didn't, George Floyd was a fetus at one point. Fetuses become, babies that become people, and they don't care. They don't want to feed them. They don't want to take care of the mamas, and they don't want to give them prenatal care. They don't want to give children pre-K care. They don't want to educate our children. They don't want to feed our children. Up in Wisconsin, in Waukesha, they are denying children these access to meal programs because they don't want to spoil poor children. That's how they put it. This is crazy. Diane Gibson, Miss Community in Dallas, how do you see this law playing out?
I see it playing out back to the 60s. It's just not going to play out in our favor. And it's so sad, too. I was just listening when they were going to close all the health care. And you close everything that's available to ladies, and then you expect them to do something different. And that's just what they're going to do. But it's going to be life-threatening. And so...
Welcome to next.
But that is, to me, that is a whole lot. This could be State Representative Crockett. This could be very dangerous. Or do you think I'm misreading this?
Nope.
You say it could be. I'm saying it is.
Mm-hmm.
When we, earlier, the conversation about, you can make it illegal all you want to, right? But that doesn't mean that it won't happen. And so bringing up the clothing hangers, it definitely was one of my first thoughts. I was thinking to myself, and maybe they'll be a little bit more sophisticated than a clothing hanger, but I was thinking about how many women have risked their lives for, say, butt injections. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, if people will do that, what will they do when there's an unwanted pregnancy? And like I stated before, even victims of rape will be subjected to this. And one important note for us to make, the author of the Senate bill was asked, was the goal to go ahead and just take a direct attack on Roe v. Wade? Because it's been chipped away at for years. And he evaded the question. But what's so interesting is that Roe v. Wade started in Texas, too. That was Dallas. Henry Wade was the district attorney in Dallas. And so it's almost like we're going to go back, specifically Texas, and we're going to be the ones to undo what truly changed the landscape of abortion care in this country. It was almost like we finally got our shot, and it's very disappointing. The good doctor brought up the fact that we are dealing with one of the highest maternal mortality rates, especially amongst Black women in this state. And so I think another one of the statistics is that about 2/3 of the abortions that are performed in our state are performed of Black and brown women. And so I'm thinking to myself, y'all don't even want us to vote. Y'all don't want to do anything. We had to fight for the expansion of Medicaid for women after they give birth because Texas was only giving them 2 months of care. The bill was filed, and it was filed to give 12 months of care, and the Senate said, no, that's too long. But we'll go ahead and expand it 4 months and give you 6 months of care, right? And so I'm just thinking to myself, you seem to be so pro-life until it's time to actually care about a life. You seem to care about freedom when you're talking about whether or not you wear a mask, but you don't seem to care about a woman's freedom as it relates to making a decision that could impact her life when it comes to her body.
I'm wondering how all of this will course through the court system, or if just how this is going to work, Judge Moorhead. Um, because you said this is now a civil issue. But I'm wondering, in cases of rape and incest, are we saying that now there are no protections for victims of rape and incest?
Absolutely. That's exactly what this bill is saying. There are no protections. This is a Machiavellian type of law that was created. I mean, I can't tell you how. I mean, they had to sit down and seriously craft this law in a totally different way than they craft most laws. And I know that Madam President C.K. Hawker will probably attest to this, that there's a certain process in which laws that these bills go through. There should have been normally a appellate process. There were clinics and organizations that comprised of Black and brown women and all women that brought a lawsuit to try to at least stop this bill from being enacted temporarily. But that bill was halted in its process. And so it got to the Supreme Court in a way that most cases don't. It can take cases years to get to the Supreme Court. But for some reason, this one made the shadow docket. And the shadow docket is we heard that referred to, is where the Supreme Court, instead of taking full testimony or having attorneys come and present their cases, and then they go back and they deliberate over several months and produce an opinion, which is usually how it works. This is a very rush process, and it doesn't give people an opportunity to fully present their case. And so the Supreme Court took that route, and this Supreme Court president prohibits states from banning. It was supposed to. We wanted people to be able to have abortions according to what the law said for Roe v. Wade in 1992, without undue burden. It was as long as it wasn't an undue burden. That's what the Supreme Court president said. But now Texas and other states, like maybe Mississippi, are testing the most recent decisions that have come out of Roe v. Wade to see how far they can take them. And when we talk about our doctors being at risk, it's the doctors, it's the receptionists, it's everyone, and anyone can target somebody. So it takes away the support system that women have when they are in this type of predicament. Can you imagine? And this is Texas, incest is real. That a woman would be forced, a child would be forced to carry to full term a product of an incestuous relationship. And then the person who brings the lawsuit, they don't sue the woman that's having, they sue everyone around her. They attack her family. They attack her tribe. They attack the doctors, the social workers, the counselors. That's who they attack. And if the plaintiff, the person who brings the lawsuit, as we said, that may not even be from Texas, should they win, there are penalties that they get $10,000 and legal fees. It incentivizes organizations and people to actively pursue particular abortions, not just abortion clinics, just clinics in general. As you said, Planned Parenthood does more for the community than provide abortions. That's the least of the services they provide. So we have to be very careful about how this law is going to actually be applied.
Well, let us follow the money. Who can benefit from this? I mean, where's this $10,000 going to come from? And where is it going to go to? Anybody?
If I could just add.
Yeah.
If I could just add on to what Judge Moore had said. So this is going to be the easiest way to get paid for some lawyers or some folks.
Okay.
Because they don't even have to be remotely connected, have standing, really know a whole lot. And they can get paid. On 10 cases, that's $100,000. On 20 cases, that's $200,000. On 30 cases, that's $300,000. It's going to be the easiest payday. You're going to have people coming out of surrounding states from Georgia, people, hard on their luck, need some little cash, that will be focused and targeted on prosecuting these cases. And these cases, more than likely, because it seems like it's like a rigged system, how it got to that. And I'm saying that I know that it would be, I'm not judges can't say that, maybe legislators can't say that, but I can say that it appears to be a rigged system against the least of these, against Black and brown women. That's the impact. And these cases are going to go through the system, and some people are going to get paid. There is more financial incentive in this. It's like the easiest PI cases I've seen. Easy peasy, easy money. And so there's going to be a whole cottage industry, I predict. And people will simply pro hoc into Texas, meaning they don't have to be licensed in Texas or anything like that. They can just team up with a Texas lawyer. There are going to be many people who are going, lawyers, I predict, who are going to line up and make money off of this. And people from out of state will just team up with them, get into the courts, prosecute, and boom, it's done. And it's devastating. It's going to be devastating.
Well,
on the system, on the judiciary. Judges are going to be tied up in these cases because it's going to be easy money.
That's why, look, when Judge Moorhead laid it out, I said, whoa, we need to follow the money. Because I said, well, where's the $10,000 or the 20 or whatever it is? Where's it going to come from and where's it going to go to? I've got about a minute and a half, Attorney Terry O'Neill. What is this?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is really, I think, possible because of the Supreme Court the way it is now configured. We now have a Supreme Court led by a man who does not want Black people to vote. Let's be clear. John Roberts may have been in the minority in this recent case in Texas, but he has been a leader in shutting down the Voting Rights Act. Now, what that does is it eliminates African American and other people of color from participation in democracy. One of the things that you can also do to eliminate people's ability to participate in democracy is to yank their health care away from them. And that is what is being done in Texas to women generally. To be clear, affluent white women will not be as adversely impacted as other women, lower income, even middle income white women and women of color by this anti-abortion bill. Because why? Because even throughout the 1940s and 50s and 60s and leading up to Roe versus Wade, more affluent women who were able to get out of a state,
1 minute,
have a legal abortion, or were able to terminate a pregnancy safely through their physician in state, that was already happening. So you're talking about pushing people out of participation in democracy through both the anti-voting laws and these anti-reproductive health care laws.
Texas is it's a beautiful country. I've got to go to this break, but stay right there. But wow, you can't vote down there. Increasingly, you are not free. I think you just have to stay indoors. Judge Moorhead, State Representative Crockett. Well, State Representative Crockett, you need to stay indoors because isn't there a warrant for your arrest? Okay,
Not anymore.
I was like, for a minute, girl, you were on the lam. I wouldn't have been able to get you off this show. More of the Santita Jackson Show, talking about this Texas abortion law. Want to hear your voices, everybody. 773-763 WCPT 773-763-9278. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. Ugh. I mean, the thought of this, and I have to tell you, this is a lot, particularly for people who, abortion. This is not an easy discussion, I think, for many people to have, for anyone to have, but particularly for those people who are, religious in the Black church. You're kind of torn, not kind of torn. You are torn, but this is so dangerous to me. Particularly when Just all of these pieces. Everybody, when it's an academic discussion, it's very easy until you're faced with this yourself, right? And this is really, this is to me, it's just this is very, very upsetting. And I'm with you. I don't know where this is going to stop. You know, I, I, I'll wait for that on the other side. But you all go on and talk amongst yourselves. Talk amongst yourselves.
I mean, I feel like what is there to say that this is so devastating? I just don't. I think part of what has to happen is global awareness of this, and for people to realize this is not just Texas. It's not going to just stop at Texas, because this is the blueprint. This is going to be the blueprint of how to successfully erode women's reproductive rights. And sitting here in the Bible Belt, in Georgia, I'd be surprised if it hasn't already been, or that it's not already been drafted and ready to be introduced. And what's even more devastating is that this is happening during COVID.
Mm.
And we're as if there isn't enough for us to worry about, be concerned about the Delta variant killing our children at record numbers, killing people now, as if we didn't have enough on our plate. Now to have this, and I think that yesterday, Santita, we had an immigration lawyer, Vitor Solano, who talked about the impact on undocumented immigrants who don't want to be found, who don't want to be in the system. Why some of them are unvaccinated, because when you take a vaccination, you're in the system, and they're undocumented, and they're afraid, because it's happened, that the immigration officials will be at their door and deport them and their families and all of that. The impact and I know this is an issue in Texas that it's going to have on undocumented women. Mm-hmm. And also just think about how freeing it's going to be for sexual predators who are in places where people are compromised to just keep on raping women, do whatever. And I just, this is...
And little girls.
Moral, I said it was... And little girls. And when I say women, I'm talking about little girls.
Yeah.
The people who are vulnerable.
How do you do this?
Girls won't have any recourse.
Yeah, but you know what? I just think about our foremothers today. I have to be honest with you. Because, this was routine. That's how we're here. And that's what I said, rape and incest. Are you serious? You make this child have a child? This is crazy. How do I cope with this stuff? Crazy. Crazy, crazy, crazy. And you all need to think about that, really. You need to think about that, because that's very real for people, too. That's very real. They said even in cases of rape or incest, what is the thinking behind that?
Change the world. We can change the world. We can change the world. Change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
To a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children. We can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. Santita Jackson Show on WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. We're having really, I think, just a discussion that we need to have. We're going to have more of these discussions going forward on reproductive rights, what we have the right to do, what we don't have the right to do, people's circumstances. In rape or incest, you can't get an abortion in Texas. You can't terminate that pregnancy. They would make a child who was raped or incested have the baby. Now, mind you, I will tell you, I've never made that choice, and just given my own belief system, abortion is just not something that I've been ever able to wrap my arms around, and I'm not alone with this. But what I'm not willing to do is impose my life experiences and my thought processes on anyone else. I will fight to the death for women to have choice and for girls to have choice and for their mothers and their guardians to have choice over a child who's been incested or raped or someone who's trying to begin their lives. There are a whole lot of pieces here. There are a whole lot of pieces here. And there are a lot of people, for people who say pro-life and pro-abortion, I think you need to change the language on that. Pro-life, you're not pro-life because you don't support prenatal care. You're not pro-life because you don't support pre-K. You're not pro-life because you're not trying to send people to school, whether it's academic or vocational. You're not pro-life because you don't believe in giving people equal access to high-quality health care, opportunities to develop themselves. We abort people every day when you have a broken school system that won't educate people. Abortion? Are you kidding me? We abort people all the time. We abort people's dreams, their possibilities. No, 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 no. If you're going to be pro-life, then be consistent with it. You're not consistent. You like killing people, whether they're in Afghanistan or in the United States. We like killing people. You need to stop it. Now, that's my rant for the day. Well, let me go on. Diane Gibson, your thoughts?
Santina, all I can say is I concur with everything you just said. So I don't have to add any more to it. I have the experts on you.
No, but Diane, what should we be doing? I mean, because you have been organizing politically for decades. I mean, what recourse do we have?
At this point, I'm not sure because I think we should have started this on the beginning end of it, and we did. I'm not sure. The only thing that we can do now, I guess, is still meet with Judge Audrey Moorhead and let State Representative Crockett give us leadership on this and tell us what is it we can do. I'm good at organizing, but at this point, I always like to be proactive instead of being reactive. So really, I'm just lost at words. I don't know what we can do. I know we're definitely praying. So, but
Well, and that's important.
Bailey.
But you know what, State Representative Crockett, is there a legislative remedy to this? I mean, given now that the State Department, the Supreme Court has weighed in, is there anything that can be done on a state level legislatively?
Not at this point.
Wow.
It is going to take making sure that we, as the president has suggested, sadly enough, out-organize voter suppression. But, we're actually about to hit redistricting, right? And that's really what the Republicans want more than anything is redistricting so that they can continue to dilute the voices of the people. And, because of gerrymandered lines, we, in my opinion, haven't had adequate representation in the state House and the state Senate, and they want to further dilute those voices in our next special session, which will deal with redistricting. And so, there's only so much that we can do, no matter how many people we get registered, if they're cutting lines all up crazy, because the only way that we'll be able to do anything on the state level is if we take back the Texas House, we take the Texas Senate, we take the governor's mansion. And while we seemingly were on track to pull a quote-unquote Georgia, Texas lawmakers, Republican lawmakers, were caught on tape saying, we will not let Texas be Georgia. We will maintain our power and our control. And so, I applaud Georgia for getting 95% of its residents registered to vote. We've got to amp that up. Right now, our only choice is to really educate those that live in this state, to have only 11 million people vote out of the 30 million people that live here, and that to be a record turnout for us, that to be one of our highest turnouts since the 90s is problematic. So we've got to get those that have been sitting on the sidelines and saying, hey, you know what, these laws don't affect me, none of this matters to me, the only thing that matters is that presidential election. We've got to rework their thinking and get them involved ASAP, because everything is on the line right now, from democracy to, Texas has already been leading always in bad things when it comes to healthcare, right? We lead in the most uninsured people, as it is in the state anyway. And guess what? We would not expand upon healthcare this session. They refuse to take federal dollars to take care of people in the middle of a pandemic. Now you add this to the list. I can't make it make sense. And it's frightening, it's upsetting, and the one thing that I know is that it has to resolve in each of us our fight to do more, to dig deeper, and to push forward and say, we will not accept this. Instead, we will kick you out of office. And as far as I'm concerned, every single Republican, I may get one pass because there's only one that has voted against some of this nonsense. But every single Republican in the Texas House, they need to go. Don't even worry about who it was. If they were a Republican in the 87th, they need to go.
I keep going back to the legal remedies, and I thank you for that, State Representative Jasmine Crockett. Crockett for 100. Jasmine for 100. I am feeling you. Judge Moorhead, legally, I guess I keep going back to rape and incest. What what will people who've been raped or who have had incest committed upon them, what will they be able to do? Will they be able to do nothing now? They can't report it. If they report it, I mean, and we're just supposed to have people who are living in horrifying situations with relatives and guardians who are abusive, whether they're legal guardians or not. We're just leaving these girls and young ladies. We just leave them out there to dry and die. And something that would imperil their lives because desperate people do desperate things. Legally, is there any remedy?
There technically is no legal remedy to the bill that is been enacted as of September 1. In practicality, there's only, and State Representative Crockett can confirm this, is there, and you can't, in case of a medical emergency, and you're going to find that doctors' offices are going to try to code these procedures differently to try to work around the system. They're going to test it just like they did back in the 70s. They're going to try to find ways to get around it, but there is not a real legal remedy. We're going to have to allow these lawsuits to go forward and fight them as they come up and look for ways incrementally until we can make more of a systemic change. And what you bring up is it's really the crux of the situation that we're talking about here, is that there is a complete lack of trust in our justice system, period. And our justice system starts with the legislature and goes all the way up to the Supreme Court. The courts and law enforcement are in the middle. But there is a complete distrust of that entire system. We now have what I would call a house of broken dreams, an expectation from our country to give us and to allow us to have the constitutional rights that we were given, but yet they tend to strip them away every day. And the absolute only way for these things to change is for us to vote and have people in power that protect the people.
Amen to that. Dr. Deborah Holden, we haven't heard from. Oh, yes, please jump on in.
No. I was just going to add to what Judge said. So she's absolutely right. That was one of the arguments that the senator made. But an emergency, right? When we think about an emergency, we think about ectopic pregnancies. We think about those really, really critical, I've got to go to the emergency room procedures. And I was explaining that I had a friend recently who had to go through a procedure. She wanted the child. The doctor said, I don't think that you can carry. He said there's a 50-50 chance of you living, right? And as it's already been stated earlier, having a child is really a very dangerous situation, but that wouldn't qualify as an emergency per se. So I think Judge is right that they're going to test the limits. But when we start talking about things like rape and incest, those things are still crimes. And so those things can still be reported. Sadly enough, I remember having a case, because I handle criminal defense cases as well as civil rights cases, but I remember having a case where family members did not discover that there had been a rape of a child because the child was silenced by her abuser until she was pregnant, right? And so I do think that those tough decisions will happen. do we go and report this, or do we go and try to figure out how we can hide it and resolve it because we don't want this child to be subjected to this? So I do think that some of those very difficult questions are going to arise, even though that abuser can technically be sent to prison and sent to jail, and you'd have all the proof that you need in the form of DNA, right? But now you're really compounding the issue once again for victims.
And then when that child acts out in school or doesn't attend school, this child is shamed and blamed. And then we just have another, not troubled child, but a child who's trouble. This is
Absolutely.
this is so short-sighted, and quite honestly, I just think it's evil. I really do. Dr. Deborah Holden, in terms of public health, where do you see this going?
Well, it's unfortunate because public health is not, unfortunately, underneath this policy. Like I said, anything that restricts and limits healthcare and healthcare access is just bad public health. So it's bad public policy, and it has nothing to do with public health. I can see that there will be many, I don't even know if they're unintended consequences. And while I can appreciate the conversation around rape and incest, from a public health perspective, to me, it wouldn't matter if the pregnancy was a product of rape and incest or just a bad decision, or just a bad, a bad decision that happened one night, or a decision that somebody later regrets, or a condom that broke, or anything. A woman's right to choose and a woman's ability to be the captain of her own health, it should never be compromised. It should just never be compromised. It should never be taken away. And all this is doing is further driving inequity, because those who can will still manage to get access to what they need to exercise their freedom of choice. And those who cannot, or those who have a compromised ability because of economics, because of social conditions, because of political conditions, et cetera, will not. So not only is it bad public health, it's bad for health equity, and it's also bad for racial and economic equity.
Well, when you look at equity, what do you mean?
Well, if I can get an abortion as a Texas resident, if I have the capacity to hop in my car, hop on a plane, and go to another state and get an abortion, but I can't because financially I don't have the resources to get on a plane or drive across state lines, you have now disparaged people who are already marginalized. You created this, sort of scenario where privilege yet again wins the day. And I always tell people, privilege is, it gives you an automatic ride to the front of the line. People won't even understand or experience the fact that there will be people who will say, well, fine, if you don't like the law, move out of Texas, or you can just leave Texas to get your abortion. That follows the let them eat cake mentality, and it just doesn't take into account that so much about how our society is set up. It's rigged by its very design. Equity was never baked into our society by design. It wasn't meant for Black and brown people, for women, for non-white, unwealthy, non-landholders to ever have control or authority or power or decision-making. And so things are sort of working as they were designed. It's just inconsistent with who we say we are.
Well, and move and do what? You can't even move when you see a hurricane coming. What are they talking about? People don't have any money. You have to have money to be mobile. You got to have money. You have to evacuate your home. You have to have money. You have to. It's just ridiculous. And all these people who rail on against these women and these young people and their choices, you don't know what they've done privately. I don't know what to do, and the power to cover it up. But it's the poor who are going to pay for this. Now, and we can have other discussions about a better education on birth control and all of that, and protecting our children so they do not have sex early in their lives. The studies do show that when children are not cared for, they seek intimate companionship at earlier ages. We need to shame and blame them for them. We just need to save our children and take care of them. How about that? Let me go to Ron from Naperville. Ron, what's on your mind?
Good morning, Santita. How are you?
It's great hearing your voice.
Okay, we were talking probably 2 years ago about it's not good enough to get out of the way. It's not good enough to say you're colorblind. It's not good enough to say, as a male, I'm pro-choice, do what you need to do, or men should not vote. We actually have to, as men, say women have as much sovereignty in their body as we do. I look at that and I say to myself, women are the majority right now in the United States. It will be 2035 before white is not the majority. So we got a long time before we solve the white problem, being white, but we do have voting and women, and I would say that as a woman, you should go out of your way, bring this topic up with everyone you see who happens to be female, and tell them where you are, net it out, make it an issue. I don't care if it's at the PTA, it's at Cub Scout, it doesn't matter. Soccer practice at college, in the teacher's lounge or the professor's lounge. Women have to get this as a topic of serious discourse amongst themselves because they have the power in the vote to crush the male opinion.
But you know what, Ron? I want you to, if you will, stay right there. I want you to have a discussion with the white men who push this forward, okay? And as I say this as a black woman, hold on, who's a product of black foremothers and white forefathers. It's easy to see. And I think that's part of what's so insulting because our foremothers had no deal, none. Just had to go on and just take it. And that's what this is making me feel like that. Stay right there, Ron, because this is not just a woman's discussion. This is a discussion that these men need to have, and we need to bring them out of the legislature so they can debate this with us. Because all men don't feel this way. So, stay right there because I'm going to get closing thoughts from everybody because I got a big panel and I have got only a few minutes to give everybody their say. But 1 minute for you, Dr. Deb. Is she on mute? On mute? All the geniuses are on mute. Let me go to you. It's okay, but now I'm less than a minute for you.
Well, here's the opportunity, right? And, I always tell people, data doesn't drive policy. It just doesn't. Mm-hmm. And I would love that. And that's how they sort of trained us in graduate school. They talked about data-driven decision-making, evidence-based policy. And then, as the bloom fell off of that road, and I went from these pie-eyed aspirations of I was going to be the person who would bring the data to bear, who would collect the data, and then we would use that data to make decisions that were based on good public health and good data. And then I realized data doesn't actually drive policy. Politicians drive policy. And if you're lucky, you might be able to use your data to influence a politician, to influence the policies. And so I do think what's before us is people need to put the pressure on the people who are making these laws. See, I do know, too, like you said, a lot of women are behind this.
Oh, yeah.
And to me, it doesn't matter if you're male or female, white, or conservative, old, Republican, Democrat. If you are supporting laws and policies, this is a law. This is a law that's going to have real teeth to it. They're going to be enforcing this law and trying to hold as many people accountable as possible to regulate a woman's body and a woman's health. People need to remember that because a lot of these things that people did, voting against their own self-interest,
absolutely,
people that might have, mapped onto some other ideology or some other worldview or point of view or core value that they held, they've now traded off getting that in this person, and they also now have to live with this. And something that's going to impact women who didn't even have a say. A 15-year-old, a 16-year-old didn't have a chance to vote. They didn't get to elect a person.
Absolutely.
That put these laws into place. So
absolutely.
We need to remember that. And we need to remember public health does not win out the day. And data is not what influences policy. It's politicians.
Absolutely.
And we need to hold them to account for good public policy and good public health.
Absolutely. About 30 seconds. Attorney C.K. Hoffler.
Vote. People who did this are people who are elected officials. We've got to vote. And in Texas, they're trying to prevent us from voting too, just like Georgia and Florida. So it's important to vote for people who are advocating interests in your community. Do not vote for people who are doing crazy things like this. It's easier said than done, but we've got to vote. And for those of us who are members of these prestigious bars, we have to fight for these women who are going to be at risk. We just have to fight.
Amen to that. Judge Moorhead, your final thoughts.
Well, I have to just tag on to what my president, Madam C.K. Hoffler, just said, that we cannot make any type of change if we don't get more deeply involved. The fact is we have systemic injustice. And I believe if we can have systemic injustice, we can have systemic justice. But we can only do that if we work together from every nook, every cranny, every sorority, every fraternity, every Rotary Club, everybody. We must band together and get people in office that are going to protect our rights.
Diane Gibson.
It's simple. From the faith group, faith without works is dead. And so I challenge all the pastors. We need to get involved and educate our people on why it's so important to take it to the polls.
Miss Community from Dallas. Attorney Terry O'Neill, former national president of NOW.
Yeah, everything that has been said. I've just been really inspired by listening to all of this, and I think we also need to fight and vote for reproductive justice and not just reproductive rights. So reproductive justice basically meaning every woman has the right to not have children if she doesn't want them, to terminate a pregnancy if she so chooses, and to have the children she wants and to raise the children she has in safety and in economic security. That is what we as women should be fighting for. And that, by the way, was a concept created by Loretta Ross of Sister Song Women of Color Reproductive Justice Organization.
Amen to that. 1 minute to you, State Representative Jasmine Crockett. Jasmine for 100.
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for having this conversation because it does start with education. And I think that you are providing a great service by making sure that people understand what's going on. Even if you're not in Texas, you need to be paying attention because sadly enough, we are continually paving the way to the bottom. And so people need to be on guard. They need to know what's going on. They need to know that this may be coming to a state legislature near you soon. So I do appreciate your forethought in having this conversation. What I'm going to say is that we need to hold people accountable. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I said when I ran for office was don't keep selecting me because there's a D by my name. You need to make sure that right. I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to do. And so this really shouldn't be a matter of, well, what are the Republicans doing? You need to be finding out what everybody is doing, what every elected official is doing, and you need to hold them accountable. You can't really sit back and wait on the sky to fall because that's kind of where we are right now.
Absolutely.
The sky is falling, and people are like, wait a minute, what happened? Wait a minute, what happened? Who did what, right? You need to be proactive. You need to, with the advent of the internet, y'all, I mean, it's
stay right there. I want you to say a little bit more on the other side on Santita Jackson and friends, because we'll get some little lengthier closing thoughts. But everybody, look, if you're pro-life, you support life. You support pre-K, you support feeding children, and you support the adults that they become. We were all fetuses and embryos and zygotes at one point. You can't stop there when we are cells. Support people. That's when you're pro-life. That's when you're pro-life. Stop aborting people when they become adults and when they become teenagers. Stop aborting people. That's what you need to focus on. Get out of people's rooms and get into the real world. I'm Santita Jackson. Can't wait to be with you tomorrow. God bless. Okay. State Representative Crockett, I want you to finish. Please go on because you're on a roll.
No, I just really want people to take the time to find out not only who someone is, what their platform is, but find out what they're doing, if they've done anything, right? Before someone is served in office, you really need to find out, have you been serving your community, right? Like, and if you were serving your community, what did that service look like? But once they're in office, check my record, right? Like, check my voting record. You don't know if I voted for or against this bill. Like, and those are things that you have easy access to. So I just want people to hold everyone accountable and take it very seriously that your representation is truly your voice. And you need to make sure that your voice is working for you.
Amen to that. It's because it really is not about party. State Representative Crockett, it isn't. You know, you have people. This party is just means for folks. We're the ones, black people in particular. And I say this to everyone. And Terry, you're white, but you know, you're my sister. That's not where I'm coming from. Because you know, we have had enough fights, Terry, with Democrats on progressive ideas. Like, where are you coming from? You're Neanderthal. You're to the right of Attila the Hun. What's up with this? You know that. And many of the people who've opposed us, so you know that's the truth. And you know it too, Diane, because you've been in the fights. So you know, the thing is, who are we and what are we becoming? And I think that someone who personally, an abortion, that's not for me. But I'm not willing to impose that on somebody else. I have family support. My mother have given me hell if I'd gotten pregnant in college. Absolutely. But my father also said, if you get into trouble, because that was the language at the time, daddy's going to make sure you're okay. Okay. Now, my mother said, now, and you can always come home. My mother said, no, you cannot, because only women have children in this house. I'm the only woman in this house. Let's say that's been had in this house has been had, and that's Jackie Jr. I'm done. So, that's, you know, it is. And that's my background.
Clarify.
You know, no, not clarify. I'm telling you. I hear you, Jesse. Got it. But this is where I'm coming from. And I heard her. She said, so I don't want no mess. I'm not sending you to school to be a fool. I'm not sending you there to do any of that. But I also had a father who hugged me, who told me that he loved me, who would show up. Someone who never, he could never be too busy to take my phone call. He might be in the middle of an interview. I never even thought about it. It was like, okay, I'd call him on his phone. He had back in the day. And I had to scare him. Daddy, oh my goodness, where are you? He said, I'm about to speak, but baby, what is it? You know how important. Everybody doesn't have it. So people seek affection appropriately. And every time you lay down with someone, you can get pregnant. Okay? You could be in a great relationship, but it's just there's so many pieces in life. And people talk about these things, but everybody's against an abortion after they've had their last one. Yeah, I said it. Boom. What? Oh no, you shouldn't. Oh, please stop it. But when I also think of rape and incest, oh my gosh. You know, no. And we're allowing, see, 11 million people, State Representative Crockett. And Rodney Ellis says, look, Texas is a blue state that don't vote. So you all, I want you to have your final say, because I think I need to go on and get my hair lightened today, because I think I'm gonna go gray. There's nothing wrong with being gray, but this stuff is about to make me lose my sleep.
It is. This is tough. I just realized I'm going to be in Dallas on Saturday because my son is playing Stanford at the Texas. That's the stadium there with the Dallas Cowboys play. So I just realized that I'm flying in, but it's just for the day, just to go see him. If he who knows if he's even going to start, but you know he's supposed to be playing. But you have to give us a call when you get here. You know, I was going to, Santita, if you could connect us. Judge Moore had that for me, but if you could connect us all, because I at least want to do that. And do you all know Annette Cato, attorney Annette Cato?
I don't.
Okay. All went to college together. But I at least want to call and say hello. Please. Yelling from the stadium. I will be yelling from the stadium, but
Of course you will.
I want to call on the way, and I do have free tickets too. Extra tickets. That's what I meant. Extra tickets too. But I know a lot of people don't like college stuff. But yeah, so I did want to, Santita, just share one thing. I do think that there's a role that lawyers nationally can play on this issue, and I hope that we can coalesce to do that. There are more women lawyers than there are anything else, and law schools are heavily populated with women. There are more women than men. In 1984, when I started law school, there was 45% of our classmates were women, and they thought 40%. They said that was revolutionary. Literally, they used the words revolutionary. This is revolutionary. We've never had 40% women starting law school. Now it's up to, in some schools, it's 70%. So there's so many young women that are coming out, and a lot of lawyers today that are coming out because of George Floyd and everything that happened in social justice that want to be involved in some form of social justice. This is a fight that's worth fighting. It really is, because mark my words, this is going to happen. This is going to be like a wave of where we're turning back the hand of time for women. And it's women, for Black and brown women, for Black folks. It's all going to impact our communities and is impacting our communities. That's the bottom line. So, and our families. That's the craziness of all of this. So it just seems like there could be some type of coalition building with lawyers of color, women lawyers, to take up this issue, because it's until we have more parity, if you will, or more equality, or more something on the U.S. Supreme Court, because they just punted like punk. I'm not saying anyone's a punk, but the actions, just this was an opportunity to make a wrong right, and they failed to act deliberately because they were embracing what they were seeing in Texas.
But they did here what they did with the Voting Rights Act. They effectively gutted Roe v. Wade. They just kicked it to the states. I mean, this is what they've done. And I want to bring Attorney Terry O'Neill into this, because when she was the national president of NOW, at the center of her presidency was intersectionality. And she worked like crazy. She was always at the push conventions, and our conventions really abutted one another. And she was always saying, wait a minute. She's always pushing white women to take the blinders off. And I say this, with love to my white sisters, because you know what? You've got privilege. You got white privilege, and I get it. Because we have color issues in the Black community. And wherever you are on that totem pole in terms of color, hello, that's where you kind of line up with your politics too. It's all of that. So I get it. But I mean, what can white women do, Terry? I mean, and are there blinders still here with this?
Santita, I think there are blinders, and white women, here's what I really want my white sisters to think about. And it's something that has been said since the 1990s. Dorothy Roberts, right, the brilliant law professor, has been writing about this for decades. Loretta Ross, who founded Sister Song, and who incidentally started out as the communications director at the National Organization for Women.
Okay.
But what they have taught us, and what I want my white sisters to be able to hear, is that reproductive health care, specifically in the African American community, encompasses the ability to raise the children you have. Right? As Dorothy Roberts has said over and over again, look, African American moms are significantly more likely to have their children taken away from them for so-called neglect, when what it really is low-income issues. Like maybe they don't have nutritious meals on the table 3 times a day because they're low income. Low-income white women who also have that so-called neglect are far less likely to have their children taken away from them. So when you think about women's reproductive health care, it's not just the medical part of it, although the medical part is hugely important because women are going to die in childbirth at much higher rates because in Texas, and as these laws bleed out of Texas, then get into the other states. But it's also, when we think about reproductive health care, we really need to think about a whole woman's whole life.
Mm.
And white women in particular need to think it's not just the way it looks from my perspective. In the white community, growing up, and I'm old enough I grew up before Roe v. Wade was the law of the land. In middle-class white communities, it was always pregnancy is a punishment for having premarital sex. And the punishment you get is you have to have that baby and you have to give it up for adoption. That was the whole conversation. But that's not the way it is in all communities. And I just want my white sisters to go beyond their own view of it and really encompass the justice, the more nuanced justice issues that face us, and to be in solidarity with my sisters of color who have other experiences with reproductive health care. I hope that makes sense.
No, it does make sense. I mean, because I think we have to dig down deep and have this discussion, and it needs to be male and female. It needs to be a discussion that we're all across the color spectrum. We need to have it. And I hear Dave saying this is Texas, Alabama. Honey, I don't have to leave the United States to see oppression. Okay? Oh, I can go right to the plantation. I let all my friends know, look, I don't have to leave America to find horrors. Okay? We're trying to dig up indigenous babies in Canada and in the United States. Thousands of them who were buried as they were trying to make them white. Okay? European, come on. That's real. So let's just stop that. Because we want to look over yonder at the over there instead of looking at who we are and who we've been, who we continue to be. I don't know how these guys can. I mean, I don't know how your colleagues can sit up and say, well, rape and incest, and they look you in the eye and say, that girl, that's unbelievable to me. I'm like, who are you? Who are you? Who are you in your personal life? You got to be a nut.
Yeah.
You got to be sick. You got to be sick. And we have a lot of sick people in office and a lot of sick people in power. And that's another discussion for another day too. Because anytime you put that in there, rape and incest doesn't matter to you, something's not right with you. I mean, really.
Yeah.
Something's not right. And historically, we have a particular sensitivity, ladies, the black women here. And white women too, because white women knew what was going on those plantations. They knew all that.
Yeah.
It's just power.
Oh yeah.
Come on now. This is everybody knew what was going on. You have when she pops up with this high yellow baby, really? Come on. Get out of here. Get out of here. And then it happens over and over and over again on your property, really? Work in your house. Look, that's too crazy for me to even fathom. But this is part of our collective history. You know it is. Come on, you all. Can I get a witness? Okay. You know what's up. So, does anyone else have anything? This is the Santita Jackson show, okay? Because I think that if we're not going to be honest about who we are and where we've been, who we are, we don't even understand the decisions that we make today. And we just have to have some real conversations about all of this. Is anybody else there? I want you to say what you need to say before I shut everything down.
Well, Santita, I'm going to run, but thank you for this and for giving us this forum. And maybe you didn't get a witness on that because that is a witness of shame. That is the shame of our community that our foremothers were raped. But we know it is because we all are the products of it in some form or fashion, no matter how you slice it. So, yeah, we don't want to go back to anything like that. So we need to move forward. And I just think that there's power in collaboration and in using our law degrees. The same people who are proponents of these draconian, suppressive, and racist laws are lawyers. They are lawyers doing this. So lawyers who are more progressive and who believe in human rights, civil rights, women's rights, and the like need to band together and do something about it. That's how I view it, and I know that it's possible.
You know, you're right. The only reason I say CK, for anyone who's offended, charge it to my head, not to my heart. Because I want to give voice to my to my foremothers. It's not their shame. It's not their shame. It's the shame of the person who abused them, who raped them.
That's right.
I want to give voice to them. I'm not supposed to have this platform and act like, well, it didn't happen. That's not true. You go to Africa, there's a little, some things happened to you over there, didn't it? Yeah. Really? That's not something that makes me go, ooh, wee, how nice. No, I go, wow. What did my foremothers have to absorb to get me here? Why is it that my own father's mother wouldn't look at roots? She said, do you think I want to be reminded of why I look the way I do? Huh, oh no. Don't mention that to me. There's a lot of pain in our experience, and unless we talk about it, we're gonna walk around in shame, as we do. We have girls who are young ladies who are making their names in entertainment, the shame and pain of our past, the hypersexuality, and they're making money hand over fist. That's the way you make it. I mean, really? When a black woman never had a body that anyone, no white man was bound to respect. You talk about Plessy versus Ferguson. What? Black women, we never, every court case a black woman took to the Supreme Court or state Supreme Court on protecting our bodies, we lost. I mean, it's a shame. And you know what? And that's what this reminds me of. It really does. Oh, so, well, you know what? I enjoyed you all today. And I know that you got something out of this, and I can't wait to have you back. Because these are the kind of conversations that we try to have on the show.
It's beyond a Thank you for doing this, Santita.
Yeah. Thank you. And Santita, please connect me to my Dallas sisters. While I'm in town, even I'm just gonna be there for a few hours, but I at least have to do a shout out.
I'm gonna do it as soon as I get off of here, so you can speak to all of them. I wish I was gonna be down there with you. Oh, that's what you do. Just go on and get that T-shirt. Go on and get his number, like my mother used to do when my brother was playing at UVA.
Yeah.
My mother was orange and blue all the way.
And in fact, if you're a guest or family, you have to wear the colors. They're like, if you're gonna wear the other side color, you can't sit over here. well, there's that.
Oh.
So I'm like, Lord have mercy. Whew.
Oh, you got to do that.
I'm staying in my lane. Yeah, no, I am.
You got to do that, but I'm going to get you all by very, very shortly. But I want to thank you, Judge Moorhead. Thank you for doing this today. State Representative Crockett, thank you. Thank you. Diane, Community, Ms. Rainbow Push, thank you for organizing this today. Attorney Terry O'Neill, also Ms. Rainbow Push. That's right. Being with us today. Does anyone want to say anything, Dr. Deborah Holden? Are you still there? She just became a grandma this week. She's a grandma. The baby's gorgeous, her daughter's gorgeous, and she's gorgeous too. And praise God, the baby, India, she's our first Santita Jackson Morning Stars baby. She's our first grandbaby here. Does anyone have anything to say before we go? Okay, I go to work, and I got to go back myself. I love you all.
Take care, Santita.
Cindy, well, I hope this will not be the last time you all will be on the show. Come on. All right, everybody, if you want to know why you need to vote, I hope that you were inspired by this. We've had. You got to vote. You got to get involved. You've got to get involved. You got to get involved. And we We've got a lot to do. We've got a lot to uncover. We've got a lot to deal with. Got a lot to deal with. And we need to change the language. Part of the problem we have here is that the language is off. We have pro-life and pro-choice. No, you're not pro-life because you don't support life once it gets here. So I reject that. I reject that notion. You're pro-choice and you're anti-abortion. Okay, you can be anti-abortion, but if you're going to do that, then you need to support the life once it gets here. You should. Ideologically on this. We have to start being pro-life all the way around. Stop dropping bombs on people. Whether they're verbal bombs or atom bombs or some other kind of bomb. Just stop it. Stop the mean-spiritedness. Stop trying to break people's spirits. Just stop and start being pro-life. Start supporting people. Start finding policies and ways in which we can help people to actualize the potential that God put us all on earth to be. Potential energy equals zero. It means nothing. We've got to put some policies and some intention behind helping people to become all that they're supposed to be. That's what we need to do. You'd eliminate a lot of the problems we talked about today if we would but do that. If we'd start loving people. It's not God's recommendation, it's God's commandment. It's not a suggestion. We got to love people. We have to come together and we have to love people. And we can come together and still disagree. But we need to do it respectfully. Think about that, everybody. Think about that. Think about some child who has no place to turn today, who really has no place to turn, and think about what she might do to herself or to someone else because her back is against the wall. Think about that. Think about that. I love you, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show. And my whole panel, whole dating game, kiss. Remember when he used to, I forget what his name was. He used to lean back, go, mwah. I'm sending it all to you. Everybody, I love you. God bless you. Have a great day. Thank you, Paul, for a great show. God bless.